for Deep Fried Enterprises. This is Will, who is the lead artist. I'm Harrison, I'm the level designer, and this is Ian, our programmer. And we are showing off our game, Root. Deep Fried Enterprises is fairly new as a company. We've been around working on developing our skills for about 3 years now. We're all self-taught. And this is our first game venture that's under decent development. We've had other projects on the side, but this is the furthest along at the moment.
All right, so it's a game about hacking, right? So, I used to be really into like computers and stuff like that, like using Linux and, mucking around in the command line and, having a lot of fun with that. So I thought, well, let's make a game about hacking, but let's make it actually cool and not stupid. And so we made an FPS. So you can sneak around or you can fight. It's pretty cool. It's like, Ian did a really good job on all the sneaking and fighting mechanics. It's a lot like Doom, and like it has very accurate guns. Accurate guns and interesting enemies. That's pretty much it when it comes to a first-person shooter, right? If it doesn't have accurate guns and cool enemies, what's the point? Yeah.
The story is about an expert hacker, Edward Somerton, and he's breaking into the networks of a very mysterious corporation. His whole goal is to attain root access so he can destabilize it from the very core. And in his journey to gain root access, he's going to overcome a slew of hostile programs, and he's going to be completely alone in this system, except for his only friend, the system shell, which you'll learn more about him in the game. There.
All right. Yeah, so the game takes place in an office building, right? Like, a corporate-y office, 9-to-5 type building, and you'll be moving your way up the floors to get root access. And so far there's 10 levels, there's going to be about 30. The first 10 levels are all like an office theme, right? So it's like the computer abstraction of a real office building.
But as you get further into the game, everything starts to kind of unfold, and you see just how abstract this system is, and just the farther you go down the rabbit hole, the crazier it gets. And one of the cool things about Root is its visual aesthetic. There are kind of like a Tron-like grid in the office setting, and then there's the objects. They have a very translucent shader to them, and that plays a part in the stealth mechanics. So, like, say you're looking through a cubicle wall, and you see a guard mucking about, just kind of slowly making his way towards you. You can kind of decide a little bit earlier how you want to handle the situation based off of being able to see his route through different objects.
Yeah. A lot of important stuff we thought to make the game, really good and hardcore was things like having no regenerating health. And that means not just regenerating health, but there's no health pickups either. So in order to complete a level, you have to actually go from the beginning to the end in a perfect run. So that adds a lot of challenge, but you have pinpoint accurate guns. So the only thing that's going to make you not able to do it is missing. Yeah, and there's also no save files. So you can't move up on a corner, get one guy and be like, ooh, hit F5 and then, die and hit F9. There's none of that. You got to actually go all the way through the entire level.
And each of the enemies, their difficulty ramps up as the game progresses. So you'll be introduced to more and more, I suppose it would be appropriate to say their AI improves as you get further into the system. And they're a lot more difficult to fight. Another big thing about Root is boss fights. We really liked boss fights in games like, say, Castlevania and Zelda, and we feel like first-person shooters haven't really had very good boss fights for a long time.
We wanted to make boss fights like in Dark Souls,
but with a gun.
Yeah.
Part of the combat is just...
This is all stuff we've said. But yeah, so you sneak, you shoot, you know, you gotta be careful and you gotta be skilled.
And it's good if you prefer a non-aggressive playstyle. You can just kind of watch enemies' routes and duck around corners, and all the levels are set up in such a way where you not only don't have to shoot anybody, but you don't even have to club them and like drag them into a closet. You can just kind of watch their behaviors and just duck around. And so if you're a very passive person, there's that. The environment, like we said earlier, it's very office-esque, but the structure of the actual system becomes grander as you get further in, because you're getting closer and closer to the sysadmin and where the root of the system lies. So we thought we'd make it a little bit more visually impressive.
It's very old school. Like, it's styled like an office building, but really, it's a dungeon.
The levels are set up in such a way where there's anywhere from 2 to 3 routes at any given time to go through a level. So there's a lot of replayability if you, say, want to do a stealth playthrough and you go through clambering through vents for a good while, or if you just want to go through the boiler room or something like that. There's a lot of options there. We liked how in games like Wolfenstein there's like hidden rooms, and maybe sometimes you find a gun cache and you feel like, wow, I did a really good job of finding this secret that the devs put there for me. So we decided to put little nooks and things like that. So the more you play the game, it's a little bit more rewarding each time. There's some rooms that will kind of shed light onto the story of the game a little bit earlier than it's intended to. So that's actually fun. Enemies. Those dastardly looking guys there are the mainstay enemy in the root. They are the sec progs. They're the security programs. They're basically goons, just large 220-pound weighing guns for hire. And they're a clumsy bunch. Like, they're not very bright. So you can do things like maybe throw a plant down a hall, they'll hear a noise, and they'll run off to get it, and just kind of look around and not what to do, and they'll just kind of slump their way back to their post because they seem a little reluctant to be there.
But they do have guns, and you only have so much health. So you gotta take them a little seriously.
Yeah, and if you don't run over their dead corpses, you're not going to have any ammo, so make sure to do ammo pickups if you're actually deciding to take them out in an aggressive way. And one important thing about the enemies is every enemy has a weak point. In games like COD, and it feels like you're not rewarded for getting a headshot in most games these days. Like a body shot will just take him out, but
yeah, you can't, if you shoot all your shots in his chest, that won't kill him.
Yeah, so
you'll have to reload and keep shooting. But shoot in the head, then you can do it.
Use your head, aim for theirs. Bosses. Each boss has a very unique visual flair and fighting style. Like this guy here has a extraordinarily large hammer for his size.
That's his thing.
Yeah, each boss has a thing, and that's his. He's really good at it. He will mess you up if you're not careful. And like I said earlier, it's kind of a throwback to old school, just hard bosses. One game we really like here, but at least me and him, is Castlevania, and it's just about grinding and progression. And eventually, when you do beat the boss, like it's an actual accomplishment because you've invested time into it, you've learned their behaviors. And it's actually rewarding as opposed to just kind of lounging in a chair and just kind of spraying. It's not the same feeling. And we thought that was really important to bring back to first-person shooters.
Everyone that's played this game, it's taken them like 20 minutes to defeat the boss. You know, and they've been really bad the whole time. So, but then they finally kill him, and they're like, yes, I'm so cool. So that's the point.
Current state of root, we are now into development of Chapter 2. It's going to be ongoing development. These are some of the enemies and concepts for enemies. The guy in the middle, you actually get a glimpse of him in Chapter 1, but he's not really pertinent to the It's pretty vicious. It just kind of beelines towards you and bite at you. The orc on the right, it's a sci-fi trooper orc, and he is a lot more intelligent than the guard is, and he's more or less the main enemy in Chapter 2. And rather than just kind of standing at the end of a hallway and just putting rounds into you, he will relentlessly chase you and hunt you, and he will just shoot while moving. He's got a plasma gun. It's crazy.
In Chapter 1, something very noticeable is all the environments were very boring and familiar Earth environments, and the enemies were familiar Earth enemies, security guards, office buildings. Chapter 2 is going to become more fantastical. There's going to be more like castles and orcs and forests and things like that. And then in Chapter 3, it's just going to go totally down the rabbit hole, and there won't be any anger. It'll all just be different.
So be prepared to be very uncomfortable, just like we are.
We didn't practice this at all.
Get out
and vote.
So that's all we didn't prepare.
So you can ask us about the game.
The enemies, if they're chasing you, can you duck on a corner and will they forget you're there, or will they keep actively going after you?
They will keep going to where they last saw you, but if they get there and look around and you're hiding well enough that they can't see you, they will then go back to where they were.
And some are more relentless than others.
Now, you guys said that the demo is 10 levels, but the final price will be like 30 something. And with no health points, have you guys test to see the variations of different players and say, we might have to add some health packs, in the middle of games, you don't want people to rage quit all the time? Or are you guys just going to keep it true to form, just no health packs, no nothing, just straight up?
We think that people can rise to the occasion.
And we balance each level that you can beat.
And once you
It might be
beat
hard, but you can beat.
once you beat a level, you've beaten that level. It doesn't throw you back to the very beginning of the game and die. So you just have to play smarter and just get a little bit better at the game. But there are ways to get through without it just being relentlessly just bashing you in the head.
What if you start on the level, you go to mid, or can you, like, midway through, switch from a head-on to a stealth?
That is actually a very good question. You can play it how you see fit. You can go all the way through stealth. You can go all the way through action. But personally, I like a blend of just running and gunning and like maybe clearing out a room and then ducking behind a corner, and then you can go back to stealth. So it's completely up to you how you play it. Until you get to the boss fight, then we kind of force you to get good at shooters also.
Since the setting is like hacking into a computer system, will players be able to face off against enemies that are based off of, say, the blue screen of death, or
Yeah, most of the enemies have some kind of at least abstract correlation to some notion in computer science. Like one enemy that you fight, it's Maxwell's demon, and so it's kind of a reference to that classic thought experiment and demons that run in computers that manage background processes. And he looks like, the Grim Reaper because he's a demon. Not really.
Yeah, our main focus is first-person shooters because there's a lot of people with way larger budgets than we have because we don't have a budget.
And there's plenty of multiplayer games.
Yeah,
So, there's Counter-Strike and there's Quake. Yeah.
Are there any female characters, enemies, or anything in the game?
No.
There's actually not really. The only discernibly gendered character is you. Is Skunkape. Everything else in the system is just kind of very abstract, computer stuff. The shell he looks vaguely male, but he's not really even a person. So yeah, no.
So you guys went over some of the different things that you had that are similar to certain other titles and brought them together. What are some of your unique innovations that are in your title that you won't find elsewhere?
One of our gameplay features that are pretty interesting and it's kind of important to root is there's a dodge function. So you can actually dodge to the left or right, and there's enemies that actually require require dodging because if you saw earlier, there's the Maxwell's demon. He has a sight and stuff like that. But the only way you can attack him is if you get within a certain range, otherwise you can shield. So you have to be up close and personal, but you also have to be able to dodge his swing attacks. And that's the mechanic we thought was pretty interesting. And then just the other thing is just really interesting bosses. I don't think that's something you find in shooters.
I also haven't seen very many accurate guns in a while. You know, if you look at our processor, it's a dot. You know.
When you say pinpoint accuracy, are we talking about Wolfenstein accuracy? We just shoot off to the side, the enemy dies.
No, it's like, you know, you have to shoot. It's like a railgun. Yeah, it's like a railgun. You have to hit. You know, you can hit it in the head, you can hit it in the shoulder, but you know, wherever you aim, you're gonna hit it.
So, like you say, you have a certain amount of health. Like, how much health do you actually have?
100.
Yeah, you can generally take, it takes 7 shots from the guard to get brought down. And so each shot is equivalent to like 11–12%. So you gotta be a little bit careful, but if you do get shot and you manage to take an enemy down, that's not the end of the run. You just need to just be very careful.
Speaking of level design, since there aren't any health packs or regeneration involved in this game, I was wondering how long is a typical playthrough of a single level?
Typical playthrough of the level is, well, completely up to the player. There's different branching paths, and they all take about the same amount of time to go through.
We have tested it pretty extensively with, you know, we've had a lot of people play. It usually takes people about 2 hours to finish the first 10 levels, but we can finish the game in under 10 minutes.
That's only case.
So you have your set health packs. How severe is the punishment upon death?
You have to restart the level.
Restart the level.
Okay.
There's very few specific situations with checkpoints, but that's usually only when we force you into fighting something there's no one to get around.
So, like with bosses?
So basically just bosses.
Yeah, we're not monsters.
I really love the game art. Who idea was to come out with like a crematorium / Tron feel to the game?
Yeah, well, that was my idea, and it's like it was actually kind of interesting because when we started this idea, I really didn't know much about writing shaders, so I kind of just sat down at my computer and I was like, all right, let's make something cool, and I just started writing shaders and I just kind of came up with it, and I was just like, okay, this is going to be our thing.
Potted plant is very.
Yeah, I made a desk, a potted plant, and a computer monitor.
What engine are you using?
Unity.
Pretty good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Got time for one more question?
All right.
Okay, so the models that are translucent, that's all controlled through the shader.
Yes.
Does that mean we didn't have to unwrap them?
Yeah, no, we did not have to unwrap them. Yeah, it's very convenient.
You will find in later versions, like in Chapter 2 and stuff like that, there are actual textures, like the orc has normal maps, stars, and stuff like that. So, and there are actually textures in the game.
Right.
Just those are forward.
Thank you for visiting the Orange County Library.
Yes, we are.
We will be closing in 15 minutes. If you have any staff member or student finding the information or material you are seeking.
I try to time it every time. All right, let's give him a big round of applause.